As Rod said, I'm Stephanie Nieman, and I work for B-Lab. B-Lab is a nonprofit organization based outside of Philadelphia, and our mission is to harness the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. And we do that through three interrelated initiatives. They're all designed to support mission-driven companies or for-profit social entrepreneurs. So quickly, how many people consider themselves a social entrepreneur? A few. How many would like to be one or would like to support one? Okay, good, I got most of you there. So some of our work may seem random, but I hope you will see in a second that it's interrelated and that we do try to focus in on the boring areas where most people don't appreciate, like legal forms that entrepreneurs need to grow their business and to scale their impact. So the first thing we work on is to shine a light on the entrepreneur. And we do that through a certification of a whole company, not just a product. So you might know about Fair Trade certification or USDA organic certification. We do B Corp certification. And Impact Makers and Virginia Community Capital are certified B Corps. We now have 500 certified B Corps in the US, a couple in Canada, and we're growing internationally, which is really exciting for us. And when we certify a company, we ask them to do two things. We ask them to demonstrate their social and environmental performance. And so we have a free public good that's available online that will measure a company's social and environmental performance. And in business school, that always felt really touchy-feely to me. It was hard to measure. So I'm excited that we measure governance, we measure worker performance, we measure your supply chain and how you involve with your community, and we measure environmental impact. And we do give you an ultimate score. And to be an B Corp, you need to get an 80 to pass our bar. The second thing we ask for B Corps to do is the hard part. This is the big commitment of a company. And that's where we ask a company to make an amendment to its governing documents, to change its articles of incorporation, to say that we commit to consider the effects of our decisions on all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And that's big for a company. It may not seem like a big consideration to make, but it's a big step, just to say we'll consider it. Not that we're going to vote in favor of, but just to say that we promise every decision we make, we're going to consider those stakeholders. So that's what we've worked on in terms of our certification. Once we have certified B corporations, we try to drive services to them. So we work to develop a really robust community and help those companies provide best practices on how to improve social and environmental performance, but also help their bottom line, their financial bottom line. And there are lots of organizations out there that want to support social entrepreneurs and for-profit social entrepreneurs, but it's hard to recognize who's really doing it. If you go to the store, you see lots of green products. It's hard to tell which of those products are being made by mission-driven companies and which are just good marketing. And lots of organizations use our certification to recognize really good companies. And so, for example, the Yale School of Management offers a loan forgiveness program to any graduate that goes to work for a B Corp. They'd had that program for graduates that went to work for nonprofits, but had never extended it to for-profits, but used our certification to do that. So, quick plug for business school students, that was a student-led initiative. We encourage plans like that. We also help drive discounts for QuickBooks and NetSuite and products that companies need, especially that when they are small by themselves, it's hard to gain access to those types of discounts. So that's the certification. And then I want to talk to you about the other two initiatives that we work on and finishing up on the legal framework. The second initiative we work on is a rating system, and it's designed to bring capital to these types of companies. As Jane said, finding capital and figuring out the right kind of capital to take is a really big deal in this space. Impact investing is a new and hot topic, and I'm glad to see there are student clubs that are forming around it, but it is an industry that's struggling to find structure. And it really needs to have rules and the types of structures that exist in the traditional financial markets in order to grow. The best example I have of this is we met a few years ago with lots of big investors, and we're pushing them to put more money to work in impact investing. And they laid out a whole list of reasons why they can't get in yet. The lack of infrastructure, the lack of definitions. And one of these investors from JP Morgan said, I need a third-party standard of what is an impact investment. I don't even know. It's not my forte. It's not my expertise to say that. When I know that in New York City, with the next time we build a building, we'll build a LEED certified building. I couldn't tell you one thing that's a part of LEED certification, but I know that's the standard I need to build to. I need the same thing for my investment portfolio. And that's what B-Lab tries to bring around through GEARS, which is the Global Impact Investing Rating System. And so we rate companies and investment funds, private equity or private debt funds right now, for investment purposes, to say, this is how this company is performing overall in the community, in the environmental areas, and then leave it up to the markets to try to drive capital to those companies. The third initiative we work on, which is what I want to focus right now in our talk on, are legal frameworks. And this is part of B-Lab's public policy initiative. Honestly, when our founders started B-Lab, they thought it would take thousands of companies certified as B Corps to go pounding on government doors and saying, we need a new legal form. But we were quite surprised to find out that there was this pent-up demand from not just certified B Corps, but from other organizations like the American Sustainable Business Council or the Outdoor Apparel Network, which does a lot of work with environmental impact. And so we have worked with those groups to bring around what is titled as benefit corporation legislation. And benefit corp legislation is a new legal form. So a company, when they choose to register, when they go to their Secretary of State, can choose to register as a C Corp, S Corp, LLC, or a benefit corporation legislation in the states where this is passed. And a benefit corp is designed basically just like a C Corp, but it has three key differences. It has enhanced purpose, accountability, and transparency. So the purpose of a benefit corp is to create general public benefit. And that's different than the purpose of a traditional corporation, which is to maximize shareholder value. The accountability, the legislation includes that the board of directors, again, similar to what we look at on certification side, must consider the impact of the board-level decisions on all stakeholders, including employees, including the community, including the environment, when they make decisions. And often, depending on state-by-state legislation, there was a requirement to have a director in charge of benefit, so that there's one person on the board who has that claimed responsibility. And then increased transparency, this type of benefit corporation is required to produce an annual third-party report based on social and environmental performance that uses a third-party standard. So the same way that they produce financial reports, they're now required to produce a financial and social and environmental report that can show their investors how they're doing on these categories. And then it leaves the investor, again, as the body that's in charge of holding the company against these standards. So why is this needed? I think Rod pointed out a lot of key struggles that these companies have when they figure out, how am I going to operate? And when you look at young social entrepreneurs or new social entrepreneurs, they often don't think about these key decisions about how I take on outside capital. What does that mean for my responsibility to those investors? What is their right to come back at me, to sue me? Those are things that, unfortunately, we see a lot of entrepreneurs not consider until it's too late. And so we're trying to develop the legislation that empowers them and sets expectations crystal clear from the beginning that I'm a different type of company. I'm registering, I'm legally recognized as a different type of company. And an investor at the same time recognizes me as such. And if I'm an investor in a benefit corporation, then I have additional expectations of my investment. So if I invest in Virginia Community Capital, if it were a benefit corporation, it can't choose a more profitable financial model and go off with other investors and leave me without considering those impacts. So it holds the investor's desires as an impact investor at an important level as well. I think I've covered the specific provisions of the legislation. Just a quick update on our state-by-state progress. We are now have successfully passed benefit corp legislation in 7 states. The first state was Maryland, and then Vermont, and then we have Virginia and Hawaii and New Jersey. And last year we passed legislation in California and New York, which were 2 really big states in terms of momentum and where the corporate law movement is looking. We have active legislation, so legislation at least introduced, now in 10, I think 11 is the latest number actually, 11 more states, including my home state of North Carolina. So we are taking this as corporate law as a state governance level, state by state, and hope that we will be able to introduce it so that all across the US and maybe even internationally, social entrepreneurs have the type of format and legal framework that they need to help their companies grow and scale. And sometimes legal frameworks are confusing and people have a lot of questions. So I'll let Rod come up and tell you about what's going on in Virginia and the success story that Virginia had as a case study, so that if you're interested in registering in Virginia, you know that you can and you know how to do so. And if you're interested in taking this legislation to your home state, then you might use Virginia as a role model of how to pass successful legislation.